like a symphony. A city needs to have all the instruments in order to flourish and prosper. Everybody must work together to create a place to live, work, and play. If one of the sections of the orchestra is not in tune, the entire performance is affected. What makes Holland, Michigan, a community on the rise? What made this happen? What are the key ingredients that make this community thrive while others struggled? Is it innovation?
I just love the people of Holland. They are so innovative.
Is it religion and faith?
Religion is big, philanthropy is big.
Collaboration?
What makes Holland so special is that we are known for so many things.
Diversity?
And that's what makes our community beautiful, the diversity.
The land and water? The people?
No doubt that Holland is special because of the people.
Or is it all of those parts working together for the greater good? These questions and more will be considered as we explore the past, the present, and the future of Holland, Michigan. Thick forests and brush-tangled swamps greeted a small group of immigrants who arrived near the shores of what we now call Lake Macatawa in 1847. Bands of native people spent a good part of the year in the area making syrup, growing crops, harvesting fish and game. But the area was mostly untouched by Europeans. The Wing Mission, reaching out to Chief Wakazu's Ottawa band of several hundred Native Americans, stood a few miles from the lake. Traders and trappers visited there, but mostly it was undeveloped, much of it swamp. Altogether, it was so unappealing, the governor at the time called it uninhabitable. But these immigrants were a different breed. They were from the Netherlands, where for generations people had worked together to reclaim the land from water, just to survive. Their leader was the Reverend Albertus Van Raalte. He was a pastor, and he was a savvy businessman as well. He saw a chance for his flock of poor farmers to buy cheap forested land that could be harvested and then farmed. He saw a waterway for trade. He saw opportunity. What he couldn't have seen was that 170 years later, his settlement, now called Holland, would be a world-class city with an international industrial base, a tourism and recreation mecca with a solid foundation of educational, religious, and nonprofit institutions, a unique and thriving downtown where, in the winter, though snow melted away from the streets, a place with a 40-year energy plan second to none in the nation. A few hundred yards from where Van Raalte first stumbled into the Wing Mission on that cold New Year's Eve, he would today find a Korean-owned factory turning out 21st century automotive technology. Near the river, where he envisioned sailing ships, he would find a cutting-edge, energy-efficient power plant. But what he also could not have seen was that his people would die by the dozens from disease during the first few years. That in a few decades, the blooming community would be leveled by fire. Or that to get ships to the town, people would actually have to clear sandbars by hand. But adversity was not new to any of them. They dug down and rebuilt. And today, Holland is a national model for a thriving downtown. A downtown that outsmarted the 1990s suburbanization of America, with a unique vision inspired by a public and private partnership, the kind of partnership that has fostered Holland's success and is modeled after the community cooperation developed centuries before as the Dutch fought back the sea. Those first immigrants were led by a preacher who also had a strong entrepreneurial bent. Van Raalte came looking for a place for his followers to have religious freedom, but also a place to escape the grinding poverty of their homeland. and he chose these West Michigan shores almost by accident. The fact is, in the cold of that December of 1846, Van Raalte was actually headed west to seek land in Wisconsin or maybe Iowa. When his train stopped in Kalamazoo, an elegant businessman turned his head north to West Michigan. A native guide led Van Raalte and the businessman on a snowy sleigh ride that ended at that Odawa Mission settlement. Then he struggled to reach a decision.
Pray fervently and earnestly for the Lord's leading in this matter. A great deal depends on our choice.
Van Raalte consulted government officials, businessmen, and fellow ministers. He saw the lake as a potential harbor to support industry. He saw vast lands, sparsely populated, but near two growing settlements, Allegan and Grand Haven. His people could still be separate, but near enough for others for commerce. Then he decided.
I am convinced, more and more, I think that the state of Michigan is the place in which we shall make our home.
And the place became Holland, Michigan. Today, Holland is thriving, when so many other small cities in the region and across the country are not. There were other communities that had harbors, had started sooner, had better land. So why Holland? It's not just the water or something in the water. It's something else, something woven into the fabric of the community itself. Appreciation of the land and water, a collaborative spirit, a penchant for hard work and innovation, a commitment to philanthropy rooted in deep faith and a diversity of people. This is a story of that community culture, that social and economic framework that began with those first immigrants.
Well, obviously it's Dutch culture and many of the values that the original settlers brought here when they immigrated to the United States. It is about our work ethic and our innovative spirit. It is about our traditions of faith that make us a highly philanthropic community and giving back and being engaged. It is our sense of family. It is the way we collaborate with business, government, and nonprofits working together. It is the way we celebrate our diversity, make us great. It's our setting in this beautiful natural environment and our sense of stewardship of taking care of that environment.
Historian Elton Bruins says those values were tested and tempered by the hard times in the settlers' homeland and after they arrived in their new colony.
It was really a special people. They had the tenacity and the determination that they were going to make this their home. And as a result, they paid a heavy price for it. They had to, start from scratch. Much of the area was not cleared of the trees, so it was getting down and learn how to build a log cabin and using oxen to carry the trees away. And at first the stumps were left and they were cultivating the land around them. And so it was another sign of their determination to make this place work. Then it became a disease-ridden area because they didn't have the sanitation, they didn't know how to do things. The final thing was, unfortunately, the cultural clash were the Native Americans here. Under Van Raalte's leadership, he persevered, and that perseverance was there because of the deep faith they had as members of the secession or afscheiding in the Netherlands.
That Dutch culture of cooperation and innovation goes back centuries in the Netherlands, where half the land mass is below sea level, where people were compelled to work together in an almost unrelenting battle to reclaim land from the sea, and to live together in tight quarters in a small country. It goes back to a people who were global traders and who embraced ideas and products and people from all over the world. Since the Dutch arrived, Waves of other newcomers have added to and have strengthened the community itself. Non-Dutch Americans, Italians, Hispanics, Asians. Those later immigrants brought with them their own values of hard work, innovation, and faith. Assimilation wasn't always easy, and there were years of growing pains, but in the end, it worked. Today, Holland is a national leader with its community energy plan, with a shining symbol of a new, clean, and efficient gas-fired power plant. That plan, along with the successful downtown, the expanding industrial base, the revitalized water and greenways, and a vibrant collection of nonprofit community services, all grow out of the community culture launched by those first immigrants and added to by generations of others. This is a story about land and water, people working together, entrepreneurial innovation, philanthropy, faith, diversity.
What makes Holland so special is that we are known for so many things. It's a destination for employment, it's a destination for retirement, for tourism, for starting companies. It's a heavily a faith community, so it is known for a lot. If I had to pick one defining characteristic, I would say it's the collaboration that we have here in Holland and in West Michigan. It's amazing throughout our history how often we've come together to solve problems. And it's not just nonprofits coming together or businesses coming together, it's the whole community.
We have a history of people coming here, settling. We have a rich history of faith in the community and wanting to help your neighbor. And I think we've continued that. West Michigan, generally speaking, is a very giving area. I think we're second in the nation in terms of philanthropic activity.
Our story begins with the land and the water. Sarah Simmons is a horticulturalist on Windmill Island, and she is a descendant of Albertus Van Raalte, who chose this region for settlement.
It's about a love of community and sharing. We have been entered in America in Bloom for 6 years. We got the tidiest city in America the very first year in 2011 that we entered. And the Netherlands picked that up and said, hey, the Dutch-Michigan town of Holland won on tidy. Is that a surprise?
Windmill Island is a city park that celebrates the heritage of those first settlers. The park features an authentic 240-year-old Dutch windmill. It is the last old windmill allowed to leave the Netherlands, permission granted in recognition of Holland's support of the Dutch during that awful war.
Van Raalte understood the importance of being on the water, on being in the lake, because this was the age of tall ships, and the ability to move goods and services, the ability to stay connected to the world was very important as to why they chose this spot. Today, our water in Lake Makatawa, Lake Michigan, our beaches, our dunes, our forest lands are not only an important part of our scenic beauty, but also our recreational opportunities that are both really important to our quality of life.
The land was rich with resources, and Van Raalte was an eternal optimist.
I am here near the great inland waterway of America. Transportation and shipping means much to me. Besides the great harbor, we have an abundant forest, a gift of God to be used by coopers, carpenters, tanners, and cabinet makers. We will have businessmen to open sawmills and factories. We could grow fruit and farm the land after it is cleared of the lumber.
Before the Dutch arrived, the waterways and rich forests were home to the native people of the Ottawa tribe. They tended crops, hunted the forests, and fished the waters. They too were entrepreneurs, traders in food and furs with other tribes. They lived a migratory life, moving north in the heat of the summer, returning in the fall to harvest and live in villages along the area's rivers. When the Dutch arrived, they saw unused kettles and wooden troughs for maple sugaring. Thinking they were abandoned, they took them. And when the natives returned in the fall, the misunderstanding had to be sorted out, and the natives were reimbursed. But by 1849, confronted with about 2,000 Dutch settlers, along with their hogs, cows, and clearing of the forests, the Odawa went north permanently to preserve their own way of life. A geography formed from massive geological shifts eons ago supported an economic boom from the beginning of the settlement. Water, wood, sand, muck fields all helped shape some of the signature industries of the area and also defined the community as a place for recreation. Travis Williams heads an organization dedicated to protecting and preserving the area's natural features. He points out the waterways are no less important today than when the settlers first came.
Holland has been built on the idea of being a natural place. That's what drew people to come here. The great wooded forests and the water and the natural landscape is what attracted people here. So today I think it still carries that same tone and that same importance. It's the fact that there's green space and there's forests and there's trails and there's water and there's Lake Michigan. That's what makes people want to be here. And when that is in the fabric of your community and it's woven into everything you do, it makes it a pretty special place. The thing that makes Holland area in general unique and I think different from a lot of places is the fact that the community is built with a really generous mix of developed areas and manufacturing and commercial and industrial businesses, as well as a lot of natural areas and a lot of green space. And Lake Michigan and Lake Macatawa and the Macatawa River running through the community, those natural parts and pieces being woven into the fabric of a very successful entrepreneurial business-minded community makes it a really unique place where there's investment of dollars and money and places for people to live, but also places for people to play. When you think about the importance of a lake and a river system to a community, you start to have to look at what things draw talent to the community. You have to start looking at what things create the quality of life for people to live in a community. And that's what really is important to us as an organization. So we view the protection of our river system and of our lake, Lake Macatawa, as really fundamentally important to having a healthy, vibrant community. In order to attract the best high-quality talent, you have to have the best high-quality environment to have those people want to come and live there. So when we look at our lake and we look at our river, we say, hey, if we don't have a really high-quality environment that these people can come and interact in and go to the lake and do recreation out in and to take hikes along, we're not going to be able to attract those folks to our community.
We love being on the water, but I think one of the fascinating things is that water in this world is going to be the new gold.
Water might be future gold, but it's also provided substantial incomes in decades past, supporting tourism as well as trade.
Tourism has been a real driving force, I think, in the success and the overall health of our community. We have, well over 1 million people a year that visit the greater Holland area from a tourism standpoint. A major draw of that is Lake Michigan and Holland State Park. And without that, I think it would change the way our community operated.
When I work at the Visitors Bureau, how many people are just in for a weekend or a day and they say, we're thinking of retiring here. Going right along with some of the different magazines that Holland is one of the top places to retire. We feel that this community is a wonderful place to live, and we want to do our part to keep it that way.
4 decades after the settlers arrived, the first resort hotel was built near Lake Michigan. More followed, attracting summer guests by steamer and train and Chicago, Milwaukee, and as far west as St. Louis, as well as from all over the state of Michigan. the massive George Getz Lakewood Farms and Zoo north of Lake Maketaw, the sprawling Ottawa Hotel on the channel's north side, and the popular Maketaw Park Resort south of the channel attracted thousands of people every summer for decades. Those same shores today are filled with substantial summer and year-round residences. The parks and water today attract visitors from all over the world. From more than 40 countries in a typical summer, Holland State Park is the most visited park in the entire state. When Gordon Van Wylen arrived from the University of Michigan to become president of Hope College in 1972, he noticed a difference in the community. There wasn't the same kind of animosity and divisiveness he saw in city government elsewhere. Holland voters, he said, typically voted based on who could best run the city.
It's that kind of spirit of looking out for each other and longing for a really quality community that seems to permeate the life of this community.
The people in Holland have all been working to find what is good for everybody rather than fighting over everything.
Collaboration is vital to get our work done. I think as a nonprofit organization, we know that we can't end poverty and homelessness on our own. That is our mission, but we have to have the right partners coming alongside of us. And so working with the municipalities, with the schools, with the churches, other nonprofits and businesses, that's the only way we're going to get that hard work done.
Many communities operate in silos where the business community and the government and the nonprofits kind of see themselves as problems. And in this community, our leaders work together. We each have our role, and we understand that we each have to play our role in terms of making the community stronger. So there's an era of collaboration that occurs here.
There's a spirit of collaboration in Holland that Van Wylen traces to Dutch Reformed theology that says everything is in God's hands. And he says a concept like loving your neighbor as yourself makes a huge difference in how the town operates. That sense of cooperation was evident from the very beginning. The most dramatic example was the repeated effort to deepen the channel to Lake Michigan, to let in bigger boats, and to have more commerce. It also reflected Van Raalte's business sense.
He was really two people. One, the minister, that was his job number one, but he had the sense that if the colony was going to succeed, it had to develop economically. And the lifeline to Holland was that channel area, which was very shallow.
As early as 1847, settlers tried to deepen the natural sand-clogged outlet between Lake Maketaw and Lake Michigan. In the fall of 1857, merchants and other residents actually shouldered picks and shovels and dug it themselves. It was an exercise in futility, though. The sand just washed back in. Finally, in 1866, after years of lobbying by people like Van Raalte and other civic leaders, the federal government began work on the permanent channel and breakwaters.
It is impossible to estimate the value of our ships, fisheries, mills, factories, and fruit farms. We possess shipping lines and railway communications. In truth, God has wrought great things for us.
Van Raalte's vision was realized. Hundreds of tons and more than $1 million worth of lumber, cedar shingles, and other products were shipped out during the first decade alone to help build cities like Chicago, while food and trade goods were imported. Another test of the resolve of the settlers was a true crucible of fire. The summer of 1871 was hot, dry, and windy. In October, fires broke out all across the upper Midwest. Some killed hundreds of people. The Windy City was devastated by what became known as the Great Chicago Fire. And in Holland, on Sunday, October 8, 1871, at about 3 in the afternoon, flames ripped through the city, driven by strong west winds. People fled for the river. They buried possessions in efforts to save them, including a family Bible that was charred but survives to this day. Most of Holland was destroyed. The largest industry, Capon and Birch Tannery, burned to the ground. In all, 15 factories, 5 churches, 3 hotels, 45 other buildings, 5 docks and warehouses, 75 shops and offices, and more than 200 homes were lost to the flames.
It was a disaster here. They thought it came from Chicago. It didn't. There was too much stuff lying around. It caught fire and it swept over the town. And only Van Vleck Hall, the college, and Pillar Church are the only 2 public buildings today that survived. It was incredible. But here again, it's Van Raalte who said, we must rebuild. There was quick recovery because there was a determination we are going to succeed.
Holland, though, was quickly rebuilt. Furniture companies were started, and a new flour mill was built. The work was the result of the kind of collaborative efforts of business people and the city that would help shape and guide Holland for the next 100 years. In the 1890s, the privately financed Holland Improvement Company offered land to attract new industries. City government joined the effort in 1901, and that's when Holland began to smell like pickles. And pickles began to smell like jobs and money. Henry J. Hines, a tomato ketchup and pickle salesman from Pennsylvania, was among the first to take the Holland Improvement Company's offer. The plant he launched still operates more than a century later. In 1962, the Chamber of Commerce and City partnered to create the Holland Economic Development Corporation, better known as HEDCOR. It would develop new industrial land with seed money from local business owners.
Years ago, the community was focused on just basic industries that had been there for years. Plus, we've started to work in developing a community that enhances the people that move here to stay here.
As a teenager, Dick Hayworth watched as his father launched what would become a global office furniture manufacturing company from the family garage. Later, his dad, G.W. Hayworth, helped support other business growth through local efforts like HEDCOR. Dick Hayworth believes Holland would be a far different place today without those efforts. The Holland community's penchant for stepping up for people serving the common good became evident in wartime as well. Van Raalte vigorously encouraged his immigrant followers to join the Union cause in the Civil War, and 424 did just that. Holland's Company D of the National Guard figured prominently in World Wars I and II, with the Holland Armory a venerable downtown structure. The continuing commitment to serving the country is perhaps best illustrated in the fact that 4 Holland residents have been awarded the Medal of Honor. Those 4 are Lieutenant Colonel Matt Urban in World War II, Corporal John Esabager Jr. from the Korean War, Sergeant Gordon Einzema and Sergeant Paul Lambers from their service in Vietnam. Past and present, the spirit of working together for a greater good is particularly evident in Holland and the nonprofit sector. Patrick Sisler leads the Lakeshore Nonprofit Alliance, a group of more than 100 organizations.
We are willing to talk to one another despite the challenge, despite the political view, or despite the discrepancies in a faith or secular issue. We're willing to come to the table, we're willing to discuss hard topics, and more often than not, we come up with good solutions.
Public-private cooperation was the major factor in shaping Holland's downtown, a downtown that flourished when small cities all across the country were left with empty storefronts. After retiring as Hope College president, Gordon Van Wylen helped organize a private investment and development group that would boost private-public partnerships for more than a decade. Hand in hand with that came the work of Elsa Prince Brookhuizen and her late husband, Edgar Prince, a highly successful industrialist. The couple was heavily involved in two important ways: in buying and renovating distressed properties, and in convincing the city to invest in its now famous underground snowmelt system for streets and sidewalks.
When the stores downtown were boarding up, I said to Ed, what is this going to look like when we have a tulip festival and the stores are going to be boarded up? Well, his favorite saying to me was, well, what are you going to do about it? And that led from one thing to another.
The historic Tower Clock building was their second project. The building had been for sale and in disrepair for many years.
We waited to see if somebody else would, come on board, and it didn't happen. So we bought it, had no idea what we were going to do with it.
The couple went on to buy and renovate more than 70 downtown buildings. Elsa Brookhuizen continued to be involved in the smallest details. She says because it's fun and because Holland is her hometown.
If you're looking for the bottom line only, you wouldn't do that. You could much better invest in a big corporation or whatever. We did it because we loved Holland.
The Princes were also instrumental in bringing the country's largest public snowmelt system to the downtown, promoting the idea and pledging some of the funding. All of that investment came at the same time the city and downtown merchants were overhauling the entire face of the downtown area. They called it streetscape.
The downtown area is, I think, one of the attractive pieces of our community. I think it's that element that attracts all of us. And there's also a sense of pride in Holland that I think is evident in the people that have their businesses, they want to serve the community. And I think also a sense of pride in those of us who are residents of Holland.
The streets and sidewalks of downtown are free of ice and snow only because of another community-focused decision made a century before. In 1893, the residents of Holland agreed to build and own their own municipal utility. That decision has benefited residents and industry alike, with power 20% cheaper than investor-owned utilities. For more than a century, low-cost, reliable electric power helped attract industry. Most recently, LG Chem's future-looking lithium-ion battery plant.
The whole idea of bringing power, and controlling your own power supply destiny that we did back in the late 1800s, this community made a decision. And it was really one of only 2,000 communities throughout the United States that has a power generation presence or even a municipal electric utility.
About a century later, Holland made yet another crucial decision about energy. It adopted an ambitious 40-year community energy plan. A key element is a new award-winning, state-of-the-art energy plant. Huddled after world-class systems, the plan looks to cut local energy use in half over the next 40 years, so saved costs can be reinvested in the community. Dick Hayworth recalls his father, an industrial arts teacher in Holland High School, deciding he wanted to start his own business. With a $10,000 loan from his mother and father, he did just that, launching the company in the family garage. But well before Hayworth became a worldwide corporation, G.W. Hayworth showed the hard work, the innovation, and entrepreneurial skills that were a hallmark of the Holland area.
Dad was a very persistent individual. He didn't make much money for the first 12 years in the business, but he was going to repay his parents, and he was gonna end up running a successful business.
Hayworth was one of many local industries that thrived during an entrepreneurial boom in the latter third of the 20th century. Businesses like Prince, Tierra Yachts, Donnelly, Trendway, and others took off and grew. They benefited from the collaboration of organizations like HeadCorps and from a government willing to encourage industry. They were also built on a tradition of hard work and entrepreneurial spirit. But hard work and entrepreneurial spirit needs direction. And in Holland, the third leg of that stool is innovation.
As I recall coming to Hope College in 1972, one thing I was really impressed with was the creativity in the business community. A number of very successful firms had been started by a local person working in a local firm, starting to work in his basement or garage, coming up with some ideas. We had a number of these companies which had really started to thrive.
That innovative sense for business goes back to the first days of the colony. Arriving here, Van Raalte understood the need to partner with American business people to provide work and income for his immigrant followers. Attracting business and encouraging entrepreneurs was at the top of Van Raalte's to-do list.
I am convinced that you can enter into business here with pleasure and without danger. A business that you could oversee, in which, under God's blessing, you could turn over capital and profit. With greater capital, interest is increased much more, and especially if you can double the capital.
Historian Bruins explains the Dutch needed help learning how to do business the American way, and the American investors that Van Raalte solicited did just that. Another key ingredient was faith. Faith led to a sense of duty, of doing things for the Lord's sake, which translated to promoting the good of the colony. From the very beginning, Van Raalte was involved in speculative ventures, buying and selling land, building mills, launching trade. Van Raalte was involved in every bit of it, and he encouraged American and Dutch entrepreneurs who found a lot to like in Holland for the next century and a half.
When you establish a colony like the shipping business that developed here after the channel was done, that was part of the picture. How to move the goods out of here. And then eventually, like 1897, Heinz came, and you had other businesses coming in here. And then the furniture factories that began. These entrepreneurs did all kinds of things to make the town economically viable.
A supportive city government, a welcoming economic development corporation, low-cost electric utilities, and room to grow in expansive industrial parks with skilled craftsmen to complete any task. Companies would thrive in Holland's fertile ground. Entrepreneurs in the mid and late 1900s would play major roles in making Holland what it is today. There was a cooperative spirit between labor and management.
I think business owners here understand that capital deserves a fair return for the risk it takes, but talent also needs a fair return for the contribution that they make to a business. Capital by itself does nothing. It's really people that make the difference.
People in this area have a very, very strong work ethic. I think they want to do a good job. They want to go to work on time, and generally speaking, they really want to do first-class work.
The Dutch brought with them a knack for innovation, which would play a major role in making Holland what it is today. That was the case with one of Holland's big success stories. In the late 20th century, the Prince Corporation brought a whole new way of thinking to the automotive supply chain. Con Marcus developed products with Ed Prince, including the first lighted vanity mirror for automobiles.
I remember when we were developing the visor, it was not uncommon to see him on the second or third shift come out and in his pajamas trying to adjust a machine, the president of the company. Everyone was expected to do their very best. That was an expectation that I think propelled the company to where it was.
That's the best part about this community in Holland. The constant development for innovation, the constant challenge to think outside of the box is one of the reasons that inspires our company and the team that I have. We see the changes and we appreciate that. For new business coming in, this is a great opportunity for you to build your business because of all the new innovations moving forward.
Subsequent waves of newcomers have brought their own traditions of hard work and innovation. Ed Amaya arrived in Holland at the age of 2, the son of migrant workers. Today he runs a successful manufacturing business, and he credits the collaboration of bankers, the Chamber of Commerce, and others who sat down and shared ideas.
When it comes to Holland, the thing I appreciate the most is that it's a community of people who want other people to be successful. Holland is a place where we believe in each other, and the success of one is the success of all.
In this community, everybody involved really is looking into not just how can we compare to other communities and kind of meet that baseline, but how can we be the leader, like leading community? How do we find ways to be innovative so that we're attracting talent and that we're kind of leading the charge in a lot of different ways? We've got a lot of creative thinkers that help lead that charge.
I hope we raise all kinds of entrepreneurs here that they will encourage young people to say, step out and try something. You know, go out and look. Don't hide your talents. Don't hide your gifts. But you know, use them.
Innovation has just begun. I really think that Holland is just so open for and ready for innovation explosions.
Homegrown businesses have a lasting impact on a city. Successful entrepreneurs and innovators feed back into a community's success. The oldest charitable enterprise in Holland is the City Mission. It dates back to 1907. As its executive director, Daryl Bartlett sees firsthand how Holland's system works. The mission grew out of a tent ministry begun in 1903 by Nellie Churchford, a vigorous evangelist. Today, the mission is focused on developing support mechanisms for its clients, particularly at its Gateway Center, where its clients learn new work skills.
The Gateway Center, in my mind, embodies the culture of Holland. It's entrepreneurial. It's a place of compassion. It's a place where the community comes together, where the homeless are actually the people who will be the store clerks.
It's a common refrain, that passion for philanthropy in Holland. A national study showed the area to be the second most philanthropic in the nation.
At Good Samaritan Ministries, we're focusing on making sure that everybody has a place to fit into the community, and that's been the history of the organization as long as it's been around, is coming together and making sure that every person has a place to be and to thrive and to give back.
If I had to choose one thing, one quality of Holland that I could talk about to convince somebody else to move to this community, it would be the giving heart, the philanthropic community, the giving nature.
Holland has nonprofit and mission organizations addressing every imaginable need.
The Lakeshore Nonprofit Alliance operates out of a belief that nonprofits are a cornerstone of what makes this community great, along with our Dutch heritage and the faith community, the business community. All of these things come together. But nonprofits are a key piece of that. Philanthropy continues to be strong here. Service, volunteerism continue to be strong here. Largely because people stay here. I mean, their roots are deep and people want to be here, and we're not a community where all the younger generations flee and go to another community to raise a family, or if they do, they go and they come back.
The Holland Community Foundation, organized in 1951 to help private individuals connect their philanthropic resources to public initiatives.
I think this community's commitment to philanthropy comes from two places. One, I think the deep religious values that are here in this community drive a lot of giving. But I think the other is because we have had good examples. If you stop to think about what this community would look like without philanthropy, it is not a pretty picture.
I would say that there has been a mysterious spirit of generosity. There's a reason why Holland is so beautiful, and that's because so many people have cared about it.
And the reason goes back to the beginning. Pioneer churches built philanthropy into their worship by taking offerings for the poor in every Sunday morning worship service.
It was part of your Christian duty to think of others and to make sure that people are cared for.
I think it's also contagious. It's the joy of giving back to what has been a blessing for you.
Musician Andrew Lee came home to Holland after studying in New York City. One difference that really stood out to him was Holland's pervasive religious atmosphere. Today, Holland's faith community is a vibrant mix of denominations and cultures. But that religious atmosphere today is very different from the single, shared church community where those first settlers found comfort. Those first settlers faced hunger, disease, and a lot of death in the first years. But even in the worst of times, they gathered for Sunday services that lasted for hours. The Dutch Reformed Church was soon joined by Methodist, Episcopal, and later on, Catholic churches. Van Raalte courted non-Dutch business people to establish the colony's economy. Along with their business know-how, those non-Dutch Americans also brought their own ways of worship. Holland residents today worship in megachurches and in close-knit house churches. The original church built by Van Raalte's followers still fills with worshipers each and every Sunday, and new churches have organized and put to use factory buildings and former grocery stores. As Holland has diversified, so has its faith communities.
This has made this a rich tapestry in Holland, Michigan. It really has. I think that one of the ingredients that make Holland so strong, particularly the relationship between the Dutch community and the Latino community, is the similarity of values of each community.
Well, the centrality of faith in the migrant community is the core value that sustains people. Can you imagine leaving everything behind and all that you have really is faith? That is the one thing that unites us not only to ourselves, but it unites us to a community that I think is a faith community.
I think that we all benefit. We drink from the same well, and that well was forged by people of faith and other people who brought deep values to the community.
I'm Buddhist, and I live in a community that is strong in Christian. And I know Jesus' children is of all color, and so he loves all his children.
Churches approach their roles differently. Some are asking hard questions about how a church can better serve the people.
There's a lot more conversation about neighborhood-oriented ministry. What does it mean to be a neighbor, even if you don't go to church together, but what does it mean to live together? What does it mean to be faithful together? What would our community be like if it was more like heaven? There are a lot of those kind of questions that are swirling around in a lot of neighborhoods that are actually causing people to look around and say, okay, how are we feeling about who's living beside us, and are we touching their life?
Maple Avenue Ministries offers children's activities in a changing and challenged part of the city. And then it reaches out to embrace the whole family. Churches are rethinking how and why they do what they do.
Well, I think the church has to examine its heart and its motives about why it's actually interested in doing that. And is it for our good? Is it for something that we need to accomplish? Is it for bragging rights? Is it to get a ticket to heaven? Or is it really because we believe that God is at work in communities and apartments and neighborhoods and families and children who come before us? Because if we believe that, then our role is to participate with God. It's not for us to be parents. It's not for us to be overseers. It's not for us to control the dynamics and the elements and the outcomes. But it is for us to be patient and loving and participate with whatever it is God is doing.
Hope College, founded in 1866, is one of the key institutions in Holland today. It grew out of the pioneer Christian school begun within 4 years of settlement. The main focus of the college was to train ministers and educators. Over the decades, the college and Western Theological Seminary would bring economic and cultural benefits to Holland. It would provide jobs and attract newcomers. Its staff would become involved in government, in nonprofits, and business. It would help bring diversity to the community. It would boost the arts and community culture.
The presence of Holland, the core part of Holland and Hope College is a marriage that I think one could have never imagined. When Hope College is right in the middle of downtown, it's I think one of the richness of our community.
There are just tremendous opportunities, I think, that a college does provide for a community. But we also need to realize as college people that the community also provides a lot for the college. And without that partnership, both of us would be much less than we otherwise might be.
It's a relationship that comes full circle for Lee, the musician who came home from New York to teach at Hope College.
The community cares about excellence in the arts. They care about having a venue that can support the top performing artists, to support the development and nurturement of the top students in music here at Hope College. And it's unflappable. Every concert that I've given, every concert that I've been to, you see a full house. You see this loyal group of community members there.
The arts are in the DNA of the Holland community. We see that played out in the performing arts, through the arts available through Hope College, through students that are studying there. Our high schools have wonderful arts programs, both music and visual arts as well.
Juanita Bocanegra's first memories of Holland are from her childhood, living in a one-room concrete block migrant camp and seeing snow for the first time. She's an assistant prosecuting attorney for Ottawa County, watching her parents work in the freezing cold of Michigan and the blazing heat of Texas guided her career, knowing that attorneys work inside, where it's warm in winter and cool in the summer.
My parents were working, it was common to work 6 days a week, at least 10 to 12 hours a day, so I spent a lot of time in daycare. But it's those rich experiences that taught me the value of money, the value of time, the value of love, and I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Bocanegra credits the community, particularly 3 teachers who went above and beyond to push her and help her, including one who mailed her math assignments for 4 years when her family moved on to other states. She loves the community she now serves. Daniela Garcia's background is more traditional, but she is also a trailblazer in Holland as its first Hispanic state representative.
We're pretty unique. The population, the diversity in the population has changed significantly from when I was growing up here. You know, we now have 30-40% minority presence in the city of Holland, which I think is a good thing when we're talking about what's best for our community. It's making people change their viewpoints and the lens that they're looking through, which is a really great thing.
Every time new people come to a community, they bring new ideas and new innovation. And we've seen it in this community every time a new group has come in. It's brought something exciting and brought a new way of thinking. And those new ideas always make things better.
From the very start, diversity was important in Holland. Van Raalte was aware that his new settlement needed Americans to invest and run businesses as well as doctors, dentists, and lawyers. He welcomed and recruited their participation. Non-Dutch business people were in Holland nearly from the beginning. George Harrington, Isaac Fairbanks, and Henry Post were the first Americans in the community. Post opened a general store in the first post office and partnered with Van Raalte in the first mill.
Americans are keen to be involved, and they have already made many offers, and they are still trying to get a firm foothold even now.
In 1929, the most enduring symbol of Holland's Dutch heritage was launched, the Tulip Time Festival. Interestingly, a non-Dutch schoolteacher, Lyda Rogers, and non-Dutch mayor, Ernest Brooks, conceived the iconic festival.
85 years ago, they decided to play off the tulip. And we've had a festival in Holland, Michigan, which has gone worldwide. We were fortunate back in 1931 that the people who were making motion pictures in Hollywood were willing to come to Holland, Michigan and show the Dutchmen scrubbing the streets with Dutch cleanser and putting it on the weekly news so that people from Brooklyn to Borculo saw Holland, Michigan as having a festival, and it grew.
By the late 20th century, hundreds of thousands of tourists came to Holland every May to see the flowers, parades, and Dutch folk dancing reminiscent of the old world. More than 900 volunteers lend a hand, and some 600 people join in the dancing. Even if that celebration of all things Dutch gained prominence in the 1950s, Holland was seeing another immigration that would change literally the complexion of the community. Hispanic workers first came to Holland in 1923, brought here in boxcars by the Holland St. Louis Sugar Company to work in sugar beet fields. By the 1950s, the flow of immigrant labor increased to several thousand each and every summer, also working pickle and blueberry crops. Michigan ranked third behind Texas and California in the use of migrant labor. By mid-century, those migrant worker families began settling in the Holland area, seeking a better way of life. Among them was a young Alfredo Gonzalez, who didn't start school until the 8th grade, but would go on to earn a doctorate and become a top administrator at Hope College.
Arrival of migrant workers in our community is not unlike the arrival of the early immigrants to our community. The transition between a place that is known, a language that you speak commonly with people, a culture that is your culture, those are things that you sort of leave behind unless you try to duplicate them in your own small community. But the early years for the migrant community were difficult. But I suspect that that was not an unusual experience for those who were immigrants, those who were coming into a community for the very first time.
As later generations of Hispanics arrived, the reception improved. Juanita Bocanegra and Edamaya, who came to Holland as children, recalled no significant issues of hostility or discrimination.
And not just the Hispanic community, I think the various minorities that live and work in Holland are well accepted in Holland.
Growing up in Holland, I can remember back in the days of being a teenager and even earlier than that, just growing up in a neighborhood where it was diverse. I remember having African American friends, Italian, Dutch, we being Hispanic on that block, and just really how community was felt. We had block parties. I just remember being able to go downtown Holland. This is where we would hang out. We just seemed to be accepted.
New, young voices are making a difference in Holland's philanthropic community, bringing fresh viewpoints through the Community Foundation's Youth Advisory Council.
So the YAC group is it's a group of about 20 students, and we're from the local area schools here, and our job is to make decisions about grant money that we receive on behalf of the Community Foundation.
We all come from different schools and we all come from different communities, like in Holland and Zeeland area, and so we kind of represent like where we're coming from and the problems that we see in like our neighborhood or our school.
This means a lot to be able to work with a group of bright individuals who have different backgrounds as me.
Another group, the Holland Young Professionals, enhances opportunities in business.
Holland Young Professionals was founded out of the book Creative Class, and the idea was making sure that we can attract the talent we need in this community so that we can thrive and create a space for young professionals. So what resources we need for professional development, mentorship, and just socialization.
Really building off of the culture that already exists in the community. So we're taking that to that younger crowd.
Being a young business professional, especially an outsider coming into Holland area, it's very strategic. I really appreciate the community as it is because of how everyone works in collaboration, how everyone almost feels like you're being supported in that way. That's one of the reasons I really wanted this company, our company, to kind of, build a foundation here in the Holland area.
Younger people yet are plugged in through the Holland Youth Connection. These high school students work on community projects with other students to make Holland, quite simply, a better place.
Working with Holland Youth Connections was really fun, and it was super rewarding because I'd never worked with kids who are labeled at risk, and so it was really, I think it was a really good experience for me to work with them and for them to work with me. So we do a lot of outside work in the summer, and then hopefully this allows the kids to make connections both with their peers and with their employers.
These young people are following a path blazed by a previous generation, by people like Ed Amaya, who became a successful businessman.
Back in 2012, we were awarded the Minority Business of the Year award. At that time was the Holland Chamber of Commerce. That for me proved that our community is about the diversity and helping businesses like mine, minority-owned businesses, to be successful.
One can never succeed alone. One can succeed only if there is a betterment for the entire community.
It's an important part of companies such as ours being economically viable is to service the world. We want to hire and bring in people from around the world, and they need to feel comfortable in this community.
Late in the 20th century, a third major wave of immigrants and entrepreneurs would come to Holland. With the end of the Vietnam War, tens of thousands of Southeast Asians were displaced. Many Dutch, remembering their own countrymen displaced by World War II, sponsored those families, often through local churches. They quickly joined the fabric of Holland's cultural and business community. Andrew Lee was born in Vietnam before coming to Holland as a child.
It never really occurred to me that I was treated any differently because of the color of my skin. And I think that's just a wonderful testimony to the openness of the community.
Born in Laos, Sue Samsoneth arrived in the United States by way of 2 years in a refugee camp in Thailand. She came to Holland and opened her own business.
When I moved here, I knew that Holland was heading for growth. I feel like I fit right in. Our family fit right in. We are a hardworking culture. I think we're on the right path of diversity that the community leader had set their mind and their effort on. And I think it would come a long way. And I see a lot more ethnic restaurants, more open to different cultures, different activities, and I see a lot of business coming in, and I think we're on the right path.
Today, the past and the present connect. A few hundred yards from where Albertus Van Raalte first stumbled out of the snow on that New Year's Eve in 1846, now stands the LG Chem lithium-ion battery plant. Today, that preacher would see in Holland many faces from different parts of the world. But he also would recognize them. He would recognize them by their values, by their entrepreneurship and innovation, their hard work, their philanthropy and their faith, their love of this place, of land and water. And he would recognize their hopes and dreams for the future.
The reason that people really like Holland, and as they come here and create jobs and create families, again, it comes back to the fact that the basic cultures, the core values of Holland as it's grown have stayed the same.
Those kind of qualities, tenacity and innovation, are huge ways to embrace the future.
If we can continue to work together and talk together, we will find the solutions that make sense in the future.
Our community over the next 10 to 20 years, I think, is going to really continue to focus on preserving and protecting that integrity of its natural resources and what makes it unique.
I see myself staying in Holland for a very long time. There's work that needs to be done here, good work. And what I mean by that is continuing to find ways for the arts to cater to the community.
My personal hope is that it will remain strong in its spiritual heritage, that it will be kind and friendly and inviting.
I would love for myself to take part of the contribution to making this place a better place, better place to live, to grow, and to raise our children.
We work so well together that no matter what the shifting landscape is outside,
we don't change a whole lot. We know how to work together. We know how to solve problems together. So as I look to the future, I see more of the same.
There's something special about Holland where it continues to grow as a town, as a community, but it still has the small town feel to it.
Holland is such a great community, as we can see from the diversity and the acceptance here, that there's no really reason to leave.
With the sense of community and collaboration that exists, and because we do believe that solving big problems is a possibility if we do all come together around those problems.
We've got a culture in Holland that's always looking kind of to the future and looking not just in comparison communities when we're looking at how do we stack up against big cities, but instead looking at how are we leading the charge? How are we becoming one of those cities that attract people because of how we think, how we're innovative, looking to lead.
Beloved, who follow us in this inheritance, we give it over to you with joy. But do not forget, we received it from God as a training school for eternity, a place where God's kingdom. This shall prosper in your hands, provided God and His kingdom remain your precious portion in life.
These are the people of Holland today and Holland tomorrow. Theirs is the story worth telling. The story of a strong community. A symphony of separate parts blended together, of community strengths that trace back to those very first settlers, land and water, a collaborative spirit, hard work and innovation, faith, diversity, the story of immigrants and entrepreneurs, the story of Holland, Michigan.